champion. After that, he had such a bad crash, he never really went into the senior ranks. He's quite a late comer into cycling. He's only been a pro since 2013.
But this year, just before the Tour, one of the big indicators for a rider that can ride well in the Tour de France is a race in Switzerland called the Tour of Romandy. And there he finished in 3rd place overall in that race, so that was the first indication of how good he could be. This is a 5-man chasing group. They're looking at 2nd position on the road. PRGalib in 1st position, Bardet behind him, Uran, then in there as well, Landa and Chris Froome.
There's the group at the moment showing the time gaps overall. And virtual, so we've got new 2nd, new 3rd just now. Aru's got to close down that gap.
I was just thinking, Phil, when we could just see the banner there indicating 15 kilometres, just a fraction inside of 10 miles to go to the finish. Who would be a motorbike cameraman on a day like this in the mountains?
I'll tell you, certainly not me. These guys are unbelievable how they hold those bikes so steady, their cameras. This is the leader, Primož Roglic, 15 just over kilometres from the finish. He continues to descend all the way down to the finishing town, Chevalier. Then it's a nasty little uphill. As always with these road race stages, there's 10 seconds for the man to win, 6 and 4. That alone could alter the overall classification the way it stands now. Aru really needs to try his best to get back to this group.
And I have to say, there's also that nasty little kicker. Once we get into Chevalier, it would be nice if the race just finished downhill, but no, the race organisers have got a nasty little right-hand bend as we come into downtown Chevalier, and it goes up the side of this little hill. And in fact, there's a couple of little corners left and right to set it up before you actually sprint for the finishing line. So it's a tough technical finish at the end of a long, hard day in the mountains.
Dan Martin here. This is the chase group. They must wonder what on earth that Roglic is doing up front. They can't nail him back at all. It's quite a big gap he's built himself. Barguil, Chris Froome working through. Bardet follows him. Then comes Uran. These 3 boys are racing to nail out of this race Fabio Aru. The latest from the race is 1:20 now to that rider on his own in front, Roglic. He's 15 to go.
Froome gets into that low profile position of his. This is the next group on the road, the Alberto Contador group with Dan Martin. Martin very, very aggressive, looking to try and blow this race apart, and just getting caught out in the final few kilometres before the top of the Galibier. That's Martin there in the dark blue jersey of Quick-Step. Alberto Contador, Matthias Frank, AG2R La Mondiale.
Well, there he is in 2nd place. He's going to have to drive it himself because he's 1:45 behind the leader, but he's only 25 seconds behind getting back to that yellow jersey group, and he'd recuperate all of his time lost if he could do it. He's 18 seconds behind Froome at the start this morning. These boys are giving no presents now. They're helping each other.
Well, they are. They realise this is a big opportunity. I mean, there's not many opportunities, Phil, left in this race to grab a few seconds here or there. And those riders who are with Chris Froome see this as an opportunity to leapfrog over Fabio Aru, the Italian champion, who was 2nd at the start of today's stage.
Let's check in with Jens Voigt. If you've got your breath back, Jens.
Yes, I do. Fascinating stage. But, of course, they got to work together in a group with Chris Froome because they all see the unique chance to get rid of the 2nd place rider in the overall. So Romain Bardet moves up 1 place, and the leading rider Chris Froome feels a lot safer with gaining some time on him. So yeah, they're all in a win-win situation. That's why they work together, and I see it pretty much impossible for Fabio Aru to come back.
Well, it's all downhill and there's no respite. There's no little climbs really at all, except till we get to the last few hundred yards of the finishing straight. So you've really on your limits, and you can only pedal so fast, Paul.
Yeah, once you get to the high speeds of about 55, 60 miles an hour coming down descents like this, then you do start to lose the ability, because these riders will have had gears really sort of leaning towards the uphill part of the course, so they won't have the massive big gears on for the descent. Going down here, they're probably clipping 45 to 50 miles an hour on average.
Bardet looking to move up to 2nd place tonight. Chris Froome hoping he's going to, and I think Chris said something like, look, we'll keep going. shook his head and they pushed on. Froome's on the front now. The King of the Mountains leader, and will be a safe leader again tonight. He's in second wheel.
Chance to look at the speeds. Roglic just 46 miles an hour, while the Froome group is Froome is doing 42, 43 miles an hour, while Fabio Aru, his group, just hovering on the 30 miles an hour. But the gap, well, it's 30 seconds now back to Aru, Phil.
There's no doubt that Roglic is on a mission now. He's not going to let anybody come and take his biggest moment in his sporting career off him. 10 kilometres to go, a good time to go out to Steve Schlanger. Tell us about the finish, Steve.
Well, Phil, as Paul noted earlier in the show, there is an uphill in the final 500 meters after a right-hand turn at a roundabout. And what directors told me earlier today is something Paul touched on. It's the way your body reacts coming off a long descent and then quickly onto an uphill. It takes some time to adjust, and while it's not a huge uphill, it is steady. And then in the final 50 meters, the road lifts just slightly more, and that's enough to potentially create a gap here or there and make a difference if a group comes together at the line. So watch for that as they head in towards the finish.
Yes, and we've got those small time bonuses, and there's only one man in front, don't forget, at the moment, is Serge Powell and Simon Yates here. I'd like to say where they are, but I think they're behind the Aru group.
Well, they're in the Aru group, and they're looking at 30-second deficit on the yellow jersey group. So Serge Powell is in a little bit further off the Aru group. They're in fact 30 seconds off that group. So it's 30 seconds between the yellow jersey group and Aru, and then another 30 seconds back to the Yates group.
Yates has to work pretty hard here. He is losing time to Louis Meintjes. He's got 3 minutes and 58 seconds in hand to keep that white jersey. They're saying 1:15 from the race now on the yellow jersey group to Roglic. And they're at 10 kilometres to go.
Well, theoretically, they shouldn't pull this man back. He's actually coming down to the slightly easier gradients. But as you can see, we're coming down from 4,500 feet. The final kilometre there, you can see, in fact, it's the final 500 metres that are slightly uphill. And I have to say, after what we've been over this afternoon, it probably doesn't sound that difficult, but as I mentioned, and also as Steve Schlanger mentioned, it's the fact that having come downhill for a good 20 minutes, the legs and the muscles are starting to get cold, and sometimes riders' reactions aren't quite as they would be.
Well, there's Meintjes been picked up by Aru's group. That means that Simon Yates is not that far behind now. Aru at 1:56, Yates, so he's 36 seconds is the difference between this man in white and Louis Meintjes in the race for the white jersey.
Well, Louis
what a
Meintjes,
pursuit.
It is. Louis Meintjes, in fact, at the start of the day was almost 4 minutes behind Simon Yates. So Yates doesn't really have to panic too much at the moment. He just needs to ride sensibly and limit his losses on an occasion like this.
There's the yellow jersey group without one man, the rider who started the day in second place, Fabio Aru, 18 seconds behind Froome. There he is, number 51, one of the most famous numbers in the Tour de France, because it has won the race many times on the back of the famous riders like Bernard Thévenet, Eddy Merckx and Bernard Hinault. Little flick of the elbow from Serge Powell as well. The crowd's building, so we're not far out of town now. This is Les Minetiers.
6.5 kilometres, not much more than maximum 8 minutes now before this man gets down towards the finish line as he charges into the early streets of Serre Chevalier, further down the valley from these men, the yellow jersey group of Froome.
Yes, that's one of the towns that makes up the valley here of Serre Chevalier. These boys, just look at the pressure being put on by Barguil at the moment, and Bardet.
And they've still got a half a minute advantage over the group containing Fabio Aru, who was second overall at the start of the day. Obviously, they're all showing their concern of the prowess of the Italian champion, who starts the day in second, but he'll lose that tonight.
The world is flashing by the eyes there of Primož Roglic, and he's racing to the greatest moment in his professional career, that's for sure now. These boys are battling out the podium in Paris. One more huge day in at the Alps tomorrow with the finish on the Col d'Izoire. And only one man has been damaged, number 51. Fabio Aru 18 seconds behind and are currently out of the top 4 overall. Well, as we look at Fabio Aru, let's speak to you, Steve Perino.
Well, Phil, we've been pushed in front of Roglic, and I can tell you I just passed through the 5K point where it flattens out, and it is a nasty headwind right now. After a long day in the saddle alone with 5K in front of you like this, it's going to be tough.
Oh, wow. That's that. Yeah, well, he's really hurting. You can see that now. The yellow jersey group still time, though, at 1 minute 27 as I speak. They're not actually trying to catch Roglic for the stage win, but they will go for him if they're trying to keep Fabio Aru from catching them. There's Aru. Menkes driving at the front, trying to get a few seconds. They'll do for the moment off Simon Yates, who is still around about 36 seconds behind.
Well, there's still 35 to 40 seconds separating the yellow jersey group and the Aru group, so that's still a big chunk of time gained by Chris Froome, Bardet and Uran over Fabio Aru at the start of the day.
Yes, it puts Landa in the reckoning too, to move into the top 4. 4 kilometres to go. Should still to continue to knock these kilometres off in just over a minute.
Now, I don't think we're looking at any chance of that man being caught there, but we are looking at 2 races at 5 kilometres to go for this second group on the road. It's just a question of that man surviving at the front, Primož Roglic, and the riders in the group behind with Chris Froome fighting it out for second position, because second position between those riders could be extremely important because there's the 6-second time bonus available, and 4 for third place.
There's Contador, number 31. He will move up slightly in the overall classification tonight. That wasn't his intention, though. It was to win the day. Hasn't worked. Rigoberto Urán can find himself on the podium in Paris because he will be 3rd overall tonight. There's the virtual standings right now. Froome, Bardet, Urán and Aru will fall to 4th.
That's without the inclusion of the small time bonuses for 2nd and 3rd place. 3 kilometres to go to the finish. With the climb up towards the finish, that should take him around about 3.5 minutes to get there.
64 seconds it took Primož Roglic to ride that last kilometre, and he's running inside 3 kilometres to go. 4 more minutes. Well, a little bit more because it is up the hill to the line. 4.5 minutes to get to the finish. The biggest moment of his life. A Slovenian winning a stage of the Tour de France.
And I tell you what, he doesn't look like a rider who's weakening. He's still got a very good pedaling style. He still looks extremely solid. He's got his hands in the middle of the handlebars there. He's not praying. He's just making himself as aerodynamic as possible. And there's daylight up the road there. They can't see the man that they're chasing because I reckon he's still around about a kilometre ahead of them.
Oh, he's got to be. It must be a kilometre and a bit. At 1:19 the gap. These boys haven't got a lot of fight left in them, and as Steve Perino has told us, they're running into a headwind now. That's going to hurt them. At 4 kilometres, the Aru group is at 2 minutes the gap on the yellow, and we are at 3 kilometres to go with the yellow jersey group. 2 minutes lost, Paul. That will push him out of the top 5 riders.
Certainly could see him dropping down to at least 5th place in the overall standings, and that would leave again another massive battle for tomorrow. But I'm just taking my hat off to this guy here, who came to the sport very, very late on after a career as a ski jumper, and now he's going to write a little bit of Slovenian history with this performance.
Now let's not forget, very early on today he crashed on his own on a bad piece of road, and he took a little while to rejoin the race, and I think that caused him not to be in the move of the day, but he got up to the move of the day in the end, and now he's ridden them all off. 3 kilometres to go for Fabio Aru and Louis Menkes. Dan Martin, Simon Yates is still a little bit behind by 50 seconds. He could be conceding a minute of his lead to Louis Menkes tonight in the white jersey.
Well, I've got Fabio Aru at 40 seconds behind the Chris Froome group, with the other major contenders in third and fourth place in the overall standing. So he's